Welcome to a journey through the profound depths of human morality and the sacred laws. We often believe that a fortress is solely destroyed by the heavy blows of an invading army. Yet history shows the greatest empires fall from a single unseen crack hidden deep inside their walls. A wandering eye and a silent lust act as hidden hammers, striking the foundation of a home. Today we uncover the chilling truth of the 7th Commandment and the quiet collapse of marriage. According to sacred text, marriage is not just a simple legal paper or emotional deal. It is a holy covenant, a divine reflection of the faithful love between God and all mankind. The architecture of a family rests entirely on a single, deeply rooted cornerstone. That precious cornerstone is absolute trust, holding the heavy walls of the household together through time. The 7th Commandment, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," serves as the protective barbed wire around it. In the quiet peace of an untainted home, this sacred boundary brings profound safety and comfort. True faithfulness is not merely the absence of betrayal, but dedicated devotion to one soul. As long as this cornerstone remains perfectly intact, the roof above will shelter them from all storms. The spouses stand firmly together, their pure connection radiating a warm light across the stone room. The ancient bronze covenant rings shine brightly, symbolizing a vow meant to last for an eternity. There is no fear of sudden collapse when the foundation of love is deeply anchored in absolute truth. But human nature is fragile, and the human mind is a vast battlefield where silent wars are often fought. The darkest threats do not always arrive with loud trumpets or the destructive crash of breaking wooden doors. They creep in quietly like a midnight draft, whispering seductive illusions into the human mind. A fortress withstands 1,000 fiery arrows, but cannot survive poison in its water supply. When the gaze shifts away from the sacred cornerstone, the once impenetrable walls begin to tremble. This is the subtle tragedy of moral decay. It arrives in silence until the damage is done. If you were forced to choose between physical betrayal and a wandering heart, what would be your answer? We often judge a sin solely by the visible destruction it leaves behind in the open. But the divine law looks deeper, piercing through the flesh to examine the hidden chambers of the human soul. Marriage is a spiritual temple. Every thought is a brick that strengthens or weakens its walls. When faith is firmly rooted, shadows of worldly temptation bounce off the strong protective barrier. Yet, if a tiny crack of discontent appears, the cold wind of lust will slowly seep into the bedroom. The faithful keeper senses the shifting atmosphere, feeling an eerie chill despite the glowing lamps. There is no physical evidence of wrong, yet the spiritual bond begins to violently fracture. True intimacy requires presence, but the betrayer's mind is drifting toward a dark illusion. The sacred vows spoken at the altar were meant to bind not just fragile bodies, but immortal souls. Vows cannot protect a heart that willingly opens its doors to the enemy's silent whispers. The tragedy of a failing marriage begins in the silence of an unshared and wicked thought. As the first act concludes, the warm light fades, signaling the start of a devastating internal war. Modern humans have invented 1,000 ways to cleverly justify their moral decay. We convince ourselves that a harmless flirtation or hidden message is merely innocent fun. Society accepts the illusion that if bodies do not touch, the the sacred vows remain unbroken. We consume toxic digital desires, falsely believing these fantasies leave no permanent stains. But ancient wisdom shatters this modern myth, revealing the terrifying power of the unseen mind. Christ delivered a profound truth, striking the darkest corners of human hypocrisy like lightning. Whoever looks at someone with lustful intent has already committed adultery in his heart. This radical judgment strips away weak excuses, leaving only the raw and undeniable truth. History shows the fall of a great kingdom begins when its loyal guardians become distracted. Similarly, a marriage begins to crumble the exact moment the mind entertains betrayal. The betrayer's eyes, once fixed on the sacred cornerstone, now wander toward the shadowy window. Outside, seductive illusions of worldly lust dance gracefully, calling out with empty promises. These shadows offer no genuine warmth, yet they captivate a mind grown weary of daily discipline. In the darkness, fierce spiritual warfare rages, though not a single physical sword is ever drawn. Each lingering glance at the forbidden illusion acts as a silent hammer, striking the cornerstone. The 7th Commandment's protective wire is pushed aside by the relentless force of selfish desire. A hairline crack appears on the ancient limestone, invisible, yet structurally devastating. Some argue emotional detachment is the unavoidable result of long-term relationships. However, texts show that betrayal is never a passive accident, but an active, conscious choice. The betrayer is not a victim of fate, but a willing participant dismantling their own fortress. You cannot protect your home while handing the heavy iron gate keys to the invading enemy. The faithful partner stands in the shadows, feeling a chilling distance that cannot be explained by words. Betrayal isolates both souls, trapping one in dark illusions and leaving the other in freezing pain. As the internal conflict escalates, the atmosphere inside the room becomes suffocating and dense. Surrendering the mind lets the enemy study your defenses from the soul's highest watchtower. The brilliant glow of the sacred runes begins to dim, suffocated by the heavy fog of deception. In divine justice, the intent to commit a crime carries the exact same weight as the physical act. This standard elevates fidelity from a simple rule to a glorious triumph of the spirit. Yet the modern world mocks this rigorous discipline, calling it an outdated chain that stifles freedom. They forget true freedom is never found in surrendering to every passing wave of base instinct. True freedom is the power to hold your ground and honor a sacred promise, even when storms rage fiercely. Facing 1,000 temptations in the dark, would you have the courage to simply close your eyes? A wandering mind demands physical action, as lustful seeds seek the soil of reality. The betrayer is paralyzed by the seductive crimson light, unable to pull their gaze away. The second act draws to a close, as invisible hammers strike with devastating force against the walls. Betrayal rarely happens in a single night. It is an agonizing process of erosion. It begins the exact moment you allow your eyes to wander and open your mind's gates to foreign lust. Every secret fantasy slowly drains the vital commitment and pure devotion owed to your spouse. The home's architecture faces its final test, as the spiritual foundation deteriorates. Heavy cracks multiply across the ancient limestone, spreading like a virus through the cornerstone. Mortar falls from the ceiling like a rain of dust, symbolizing the rapid decay of mutual trust. Mental adultery is the first brutal hammer blow, striking violently against the walls of the home. When the body crosses the forbidden boundary, it is the moment the heavy roof collapses. The room shakes violently as the crimson light of unchecked lust fully consumes the betrayer's dark soul. Lost in the terrifying illusion, they are blind to the catastrophic destruction behind them. The faithful keeper collapses to the floor, crushed by the overwhelming weight of deception. Tears carve painful trails through the thick layer of gray dust covering their sorrowful, devastated face. Profound, spiritual agony rips through the atmosphere, more painful than any physical weapon. The room's absolute silence is shattered by the terrifying, deafening roar of the falling beams. The sacred cornerstone splits down the center, extinguishing the divine light that once guided them both. Sharp, protective iron thorns are bent and broken, embedding themselves deep into the fractured limestone. The massive wooden roof caves in, crushing the remnants of the sanctuary beneath heavy stones. Cold moonlight floods the ruined space, revealing the naked, brutal truth of the catastrophic destruction. Historically, the sack of a great city is marked by terrifying fire, ruin, and weeping souls. A sacred marriage's collapse mirrors this devastation, leaving a barren wasteland of shattered faith. The betrayer realizes far too late as the toxic illusion finally fades into the cold night. What was once perceived as harmless entertainment has now entirely destroyed the most precious thing they owned. The fleeting satisfaction of lust leaves nothing but a bitter taste of endless regret and sorrow. The walls of absolute trust that required decades to build are instantly reduced to mere piles of rubble. Innocent victims suffer the most, carrying deep, invisible scars from the ruins for a lifetime. A family torn by betrayal leaves generations wandering lost in a wilderness of pain. Surrendering to an illusion ultimately means the complete loss of a real sanctuary. The climax of destruction leaves no winners, only broken souls amidst the tragic wreckage of their vows. As the dust settles, the horrifying reality of the catastrophe comes into clear view. The third act concludes, moving from the violent collapse into the quiet, lingering aftermath. The thick dust finally clears away, revealing the terrible cost of a fleeting, selfish desire. What was once a sacred sanctuary now lies in ruins beneath the cold and freezing night sky. The faithful keeper is left alone among the shattered stones of a deeply broken foundation. A heavy silence falls over the vast destruction, replacing the warm laughter that once echoed here. The final remnants of the home are scattered, ending the tragic climax of unseen betrayal. We now enter the dark era of painful ruins, left behind by a once perfect, sacred covenant. Look closely at the ash-covered hands clutching a broken bronze ring, a symbol of endless grief. The 7th Commandment was never meant to be a harsh chain that strictly suffocates human love. It is a profound divine discipline designed to tightly protect the fragile beauty of family. Without deep loyalty, the most passionate romance will quickly turn into a barren wasteland. True faithfulness is therefore the greatest and most honorable victory of human devotion. It requires the constant courage to firmly say no to the whispering shadows of passing desires. The scars left behind by a shattered trust serve as a permanent warning to future generations. We must carefully guard our minds just as strongly as we would guard the heavy gates of a city. Because every great fall is simply the final result of 1,000 small, ignored compromises. A single wandering thought, if left unchecked, will eventually grow into a massive fire. It burns the fabric of intimacy, leaving behind nothing but cold and deeply bitter ashes. In the quiet aftermath, we must realize the sacred laws were purely given for our survival. To build a home that can withstand the test of time, the foundation must be anchored in pure truth. The mind is a sacred garden, and we must carefully uproot the weeds of lust before they multiply. A culture that constantly celebrates silent betrayal is a culture digging its own grave. We must rise above the heavy darkness of the modern world and boldly reclaim the value of honor. Let the tragic ruins of this beautiful stone room serve as a powerful and lasting reminder. True strength is not found in conquering 1,000 lands, but in conquering your own deep desires. The faithful keeper still holds the broken covenant ring, holding on to the memory of what was lost. May we all clearly learn the harsh historical lessons hidden within the collapse of this home. Because every single choice we make in the dark will eventually be brought into the light. If an impure thought can shatter a marriage, how do we rebuild a foundation broken by betrayal? You may be faithful, but are you certain you have never stolen? The dark truth of modern theft awaits next. Share your thoughts below, hit the like button, and subscribe to our channel to uncover more mysteries.